Hello and welcome aboard the Battleship Pretension from Cinephile Video in Los Angeles, California. I'm Tyler Smith.
And I'm David Bax.
Thank you for watching. David,
yeah,
how you doing?
I'm feeling particularly sensitive to sunlight today, but I think it's just a vitamin deficiency.
You are looking a little pale these days.
Today we're going to talk about Tim Burton's Dark Shadows.
That's right, and we're going to be joined by the king of TV, Paul Goebel, in just a moment, but first, Dark Shadows.
My name is Barnabas Collins. 2 centuries ago, I made Collinwood my home. My love. Until a jealous witch cursed me, condemning me to the shadows. One of you die! For all time.
Based on the 1960s daytime soap opera of the same name, Dark Shadows is the story of an aristocratic vampire in small-town Maine who returns to the world after 200 years in the ground.
1972.
That vampire, Barnabas Collins, will have to adjust to life in the early 1970s, as well as contend with his dysfunctional Collins descendants and reminders of his long-dead love.
Love me.
Never.
Let's get into it, shall we?
Indeed.
You liked the beginning of the film.
I did. I thought that it had this really strong, exciting melodrama, and everything was bombastic. I was excited for the film that could have been.
I also didn't like the film overall, but I didn't even like this opening segment because I get what you're talking about, the grandeur, the sweep of the things. But that prologue it feels like it's about a minute and a half. I wish we could have taken more time to live in this world, get to know the 1700s Barnabas and the 1700 Collinsport, which is the town where the film takes place. You know, by the time he sees in 1970s the young woman who looks just like the woman he was in love with in the 1770s, right. I kind of didn't even realize because you've seen so little of this woman. You
don't see her a lot in the film in general. She shows up. She's sort of our introduction to the Collins family in the 1970s. And she's got a history, and who is she? We don't really know, and after a certain point it appears the film doesn't care.
Story is definitely the problem here, because they made a comedic version of Dark Shadows, while still, I think, trying to stick to a consistent tone. It's less a comedy about a vampire than it is, at way too many points, a comedy about look how silly the early 70s were.
What sorcery is this? Reveal yourself, tiny songstress!
When the movie did work for me is when the comedy leaned toward being a little darker, but it just doesn't commit to that tone.
It doesn't commit to anything. If it had picked one path and just gone all the way, whether it be like a manic comedy like Beetlejuice, or just an over-the-top melodrama, either of those would have been better. But as it is, it's uneven, and fair enough, Johnny Depp, I like his performance. I think it's a very committed performance.
I'm going to disagree with you on Johnny Depp. And I was going to ask you, because I've pretty much sat out Tim Burton since Big Fish. I think was the last one I saw, which I kind of liked. You've seen more of in the interim. Has he lost his ability to be a director of actors? There's not a single performance in the film I can point to that I say I like. And when it's that uniformly off the mark, it's not the actor's fault. That's the director's fault.
I don't blame them. I think he's given a lot to do, and I think he clearly is excited about the material and is committed to it. Whether it's a great performance is another thing, but it's committed, and he clearly is invested.
Into my eyes and deliver me your innermost thoughts. Awaken.
All the components were there. Intriguing source material, great cast, the art direction that's always there, although even that bores me at this point.
When you're looking out the window of the manor and you're seeing essentially just a CGI landscape, that stuff doesn't interest me. The set direction of the interior of this mansion, particularly the doctor's office area, was fun and classic Tim Burton stuff.
If he had made this film 20 years ago, you can see what it could have been. It could have had that manic Beetlejuice quality to it, but it just...
In the darkness.
And it just would have been more committed to just being balls out crazy. As it is, it's just what's a verbal shrug? Just eh.
Right, yeah.
That's how I felt. Just
safe. So we don't recommend that you go see Dark Shadows, but we'll probably have some good recommendations in our next segment, so stick around. We're going to talk to comedian Paul Goebel, the king of TV, about some more successful, perhaps, TV to film adaptations. We've just reviewed Tim Burton's Dark Shadows. Here to talk about some other TV to film adaptations. You know him from Comedy Central's Beat the Geeks, where he was the TV geek, and he currently has his own weekly TV discussion podcast, The Paul Goebel Show. Ladies and gentlemen, the king of TV, Paul Goebel. How are things going?
Awesome.
How's TV?
It's pretty great.
TV's pretty good.
TV's pretty good these days, yeah.
What do you think are some of the best TV to film adaptations?
Well, I wrote an article for Film Threat many years ago about that. There are a lot that could have been bad but were good, like The Fugitive, I thought was one of the better ones. Mm-hmm. It's an old story. It's, you know, Les Miserables. It's, you know, a dude being chased through the thing. So I thought that was a really good one.
Do you judge based on how good the movie is, or how well it maintained the spirit of the show? It sounds like the former is what is.
Yeah, the bottom line is it a good movie? Because like we said about Dark Shadows, so many people have no concept of what that show was. But if it's not a good movie to begin with, if it just doesn't hold your interest, then what's the point?
The Fugitive I love, but like, I mean, it works perfectly well. I think I saw it in the theater and I was too young to know that it was a show before then, so
no,
it works perfectly fine as a film.
Like they could have easily made the one-armed man have two arms. It would have been a perfectly fine movie. There's no reason that he needed to have one arm.
Except he needs to be identified.
Right.
You can't have Harrison Ford saying, a two-armed man killed my wife.
Guy with two arms. That's just find the guy with two arms. And then he goes into the hospital and he's looking records of guys with two arms. Fuck, I got too many guys here. I got to narrow this down somehow.
And then the film turns into a tale of obsession and suicide.
But you're right. It didn't have to have anything to do with the TV show, and but the one-armed man, that was the perfect thing. That was the nod to the show and things like that. And I think if you want to make it just extra good, like the fact that Jonathan Frid is in Dark Shadows, 21 Jump Street, another perfect example. You know, that movie is funny to me. Just bottom line, it made me laugh.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a spoiler at this point to say that Johnny Depp has a cameo in 21 Jump Street, which I was dreading. I think going in, I was like, what cornball way are they gonna like work this in? And then not only do they work it in a clever way, his scene is really funny. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
From what I understood, that was just him and Peter DeLuise riffing, and the writers literally were listening to them, writing it down and putting it in the script. But that's the way you do it. And same with, you know, Judy Hoffs also has a cameo. Everyone from the show has a cameo. Again, my kids saw the movie, loved it. They have no clue what the TV show is.
I'm not really that much of a TV person, but it's not at all unusual for a film that's an adaptation of a TV show will become a comedy when the show was not.
Yeah.
Like Dark Shadows was not, Starsky and Hutch, and then 21 Jump Street. Like those were shows that were very serious about their subject matter, and yet almost for anybody to like take them seriously as films, they almost have to make fun of it.
These shows you're talking about are so of their era. If you take a show that's dated and try to make a serious one, you get that boring Miami Vice movie from a few years ago.
The Brady Bunch movie is one of the better, I think, adaptations, because it does it the right way, because it pays homage to the show.
The Starsky and Hutch film winds up making fun of Starsky and Hutch. It makes fun of the time period, makes fun of the show itself. Whereas the Brady Bunch film, you go into it, this family lives in the 70s, but it's the 90s, and you think it's going to make fun of them. And it does a little bit. But ultimately what it winds up being is like, look how cynical we are.
Right.
This kind of sucks.
Because it makes fun of it the whole time in a gentle way, but by doing that, it shows how simple they are and how they're all happy. You know, one of my favorite scenes is when the guy's making out with Marcia and he tries to grab her boob and she's like, that's second base. I don't go to second base. Which is ludicrous, of course, that any teenager would say that. But at the same time, is that such a bad thing that teenagers don't go to second base? That might be a good thing.
Something to think about.
For you kids out there who are thinking about going to second base, think twice.
You kids out there can find us at battleshippretension.com as always. Paul, where can people find you?
TheKingOfTV.com.
Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to Cinephile Video for having us, and thank you at home for watching.
We'll get you next time.
Bye.
Bye.